Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is a public hearing on expedited bill 25-19, Contracts and Procurement Local Business Preference Program. This bill would establish a price preference for local businesses and county contracts, establish a local business preference program for certain county contracts, and generally amend the law governing county procurement. A GO committee work session is scheduled for Thursday, December 5th. Persons wishing to submit additional material for the council's consideration should do so before the close of business December 2nd, so that your views can be included in the material which staff will prepare for the committee's consideration. If you would like to follow the progress of a council bill, the council website has a subscribe function. Go to the council website and use the View Council's Records and Legislative Updates link to learn how. And for this item, we have Ash Shetty, Marilyn Backham, Kenneth O'Connell, Susan Young Mulianux, I think. Mulianu. See, I need to brush up on my French. Kenny Malik. Start with Mr. Shetty. Hi. Oh, can you press the button again? There you go.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Council President, Council Vice President, Council Member Reamer. I'm Ash Shetty. I'm Director of the Office of Procurement, and I'm here on behalf of the County Executive to encourage the Council's favorable consideration of Bill 2519 to establish a preference program for Montgomery County-based businesses. The purpose of this legislation is to increase the participation of local businesses in the county's procurement process by establishing a local business preference program for certain county procurement contracts. This bill is intended to bolster the county's economic growth and to support the creation and retention of the employment opportunities within the county by establishing a 10% preference for county-based businesses. Montgomery County has a robust, active and responsive business community. These businesses employ local residents, provide good jobs, and make real contributions to the local economy. It is clear that businesses will benefit from the new preference program. The program is widely supported by local vendors, chambers of commerce, and county residents because it encourages local businesses to participate in the county's procurement. In addition, this preference program will provide an economic opportunity that every local business can benefit from now and in the future. Prince George's County and the District of Columbia both have local preference programs for their local vendors. This legislation will level the playing field and assist Montgomery County-based businesses to gain more county contracting opportunities. This bill is one of many efforts that the county is making based on feedback from the business community to make improvements to procurement programs and procedures. County Executive Eldridge believes that passage of this bill will help us better serve our business community. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Marilyn Balcom.
Madam President, council members, my name is Marilyn Balcom. I'm the President and CEO of the Gaithersburg Germantown Chamber of Commerce. I have with me today my high school intern, Megan Causey. She's from Northwest High School, and we're giving her a small taste of democracy in action today.
Excellent.
So welcome, Megan. The Gaithersburg Germantown Chamber of Commerce supports Bill 2519 to establish the 10% preference for the county-based businesses competing for Montgomery County contracts. Not only will this bill help all participating businesses, the proposed program will complement the existing local small business reserve program to ensure that county departments award 20% of their procurement goods and services to registered certified local small businesses. While Bill 2519 is not limiting the size of participating businesses, which we agree with, it will nonetheless help our small businesses compete. I'd like to focus my remarks on two specific issues. First, this bill will help level the playing field for Montgomery County businesses who most likely have a higher cost solely because they're doing business in Montgomery County. Those increased costs include owning or leasing commercial space and higher personnel cost. Bill 2519 recognizes that doing business in Montgomery County does have a real cost, increased cost for businesses. The second point is strictly economic. Awarding more contracts in Montgomery County will have an economic multiplier effect in our local economy. Based on the fiscal impact statement, this bill would have resulted in an additional $700,000 coming back in the economy for the last 2 years. That's spent on jobs and other commercial expenses, which in turn will be spent on entertainment, restaurants, various retail. So pumping more money into our local businesses will help our businesses grow and be more competitive, not only in the county, but outside the county, which we would like. I'd also like to take a moment to thank the Director of Procurement, Ash Shetty, for reaching out to businesses and listening to their concerns. Many of our small businesses have given up ever doing business with Montgomery County because the process had become too cumbersome. Our understanding is that this process has been significantly streamlined. The challenge now is to convince businesses to give the program another chance. The Chamber has reached out to our members to let them know that changes are afoot, and our hope is that these changes will result in Montgomery County businesses growing and doing more business locally. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. O'Connell.
Yes, my name is Ken O'Connell. I'm here today representing O'Connell and Lawrence Incorporated, 17904 Georgia Avenue in Olney. First, want to thank the Council, President Navarro, and the County Executive for advancing this bill to this stage and allowing me the opportunity to speak to you here today. I'm proud to say, first of all, that I'm a lifelong Montgomery County resident. I'm also proud to say that this year marks the 25th year that O'Connell and Lawrence has been in business, the entirety of that 25 years as a Montgomery County business. I live here, I work here, I pay taxes here. O'Connell and Lawrence has been here for 25 years, and it pays taxes here, and I vote in every election. I voted in every election since I was 18, a long time ago.
Awesome.
So I live here, work here, and that's very important. I support this bill, Contracts and Procurement for Local Business Preference Program, because, one, it's good for Montgomery County businesses, two, it's good for Montgomery County taxpayers, and three, it's good for Montgomery County tax base. Since O'Connell and Lawrence has its principal place of business in Montgomery County, we buy all of our vehicles here in Montgomery County. We purchase all our gas for those vehicles here in Montgomery County. All our office supplies are purchased from Montgomery County businesses, and our employees contribute every day to other Montgomery County businesses. O'Connell and Lawrence generates revenue not only from its business inside Montgomery County, but also from outside of Montgomery County. We bring revenue home to Montgomery County from the state of Maryland, other states, other counties, the District of Columbia, the federal government, and from private sector clients across the United States. When we compete in other jurisdictions, we compete with firms that benefit from those jurisdictions' local business preferences, and sadly, we mostly compete here in our own county against those same businesses with no local business preference of our own. I'm not an economist, but I've read several articles that show how local dollars kept local come back many-fold, far greater than 10%. Further, there's no evidence that 10% preference points for professional services in an RFP cost a single dollar more if awarded to a local firm. There may be some opponents of this bill that you're going to hear from, maybe even speak to you today. I encourage you to ask them if they live in Montgomery County and if they represent only Montgomery County businesses. Or simply ask yourself this question: why is it okay for other jurisdictions to subject Montgomery County businesses to preference programs when the same benefits are not afforded to our own Montgomery County businesses? The answer is simple: it is not. There is so much more that you can do to help Montgomery County businesses, but this is a very good start, and we ask that you pass this bill quickly. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Molina, you'll pronounce it better than me.
Good afternoon. My name's Susan Molyneux. I'm president of DCMM Architects, 18243D Flower Hill Way, Gaithersburg, Maryland. Similar to Mr. O'Connell, our firm's been in continuous practice since 1946, so we're into 70 years, probably close to 50 years in Montgomery County alone. As a local small business, we strongly support this bill. It's wonderful to see the county acknowledging the value of hiring local county firms. The reasons for our support is, again, we are a local small business in the county. We're based in the county. We live in the county. Our staff lives in the county. We frequent and support local businesses in our day-to-day life and in our business life. We work with many other Montgomery County businesses as part of the services that we provide. There are numerous other qualified professional firms in the county. There's really no need to look elsewhere. I think we hear that sometimes when we're going after projects, that it's the services aren't available here. We in our case, disagree. We pay local taxes, both personal and business, and as Ken said, we vote, and all the time, every election. We do feel that the county should give local business preference to county-based businesses for county contracts. As Ken said, our neighboring jurisdictions that we work in do give preferential treatment to their local businesses, which do put us, in many cases, at a competitive disadvantage. We feel that our tax dollars should support the numerous local Montgomery County businesses that are qualified instead of awarding them to Prince George's, Howard, D.C., Virginia firms. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Malik.
I thank you, President Navarro and council members. I'm Kenny Malik. I represent Malik Plumbing and Heating and Malik Mechanical Contractors. I'm born and raised in Montgomery County and have had my business here for 26 years as of last week. Right now, I would definitely suggest supporting Bill 2519 and trying to advance this forward. I could go through the process of restating everything else that everybody else states. There's a few other points that I want to make, and one would be, as a benefit, would be a reduction in the carbon footprint. Can you imagine an easing of traffic by 10%? Traffic coming from Prince George's County for other contractors and vendors and people into Montgomery County, and the transverse. If you want to work where you live and live where you work, that could be a huge reduction in carbon footprint as well as traffic easing, which is two major issues going on in the county right now. And lastly is the culture. One thing that is apparent is that Montgomery County wants to change the culture in the community. And it's right now, all of the businesses that are in Montgomery County actually support the county. And they support the county through parks, through Cub Scouts, through Boy Scouts, through baseballs, sponsorships, donation in time, donation in monies to support the community. You're not going to see that with outside jurisdictions coming in and taking the money from this area and feeding it to who knows where. Thank you again, and I really would like to have you guys advocate for supporting Bill 2519.
Thank you very much. This ends our public hearing on item number 5, and as I said, the GO Committee will have a session on December 5th. Thank you very much for coming out today. Item number 6 is a public hearing on Bill 30-19, Human Rights and Civil Liberties, Race Discrimination, Protective Hairstyles, also known as the Crown Act. This bill would prohibit discrimination based on certain protective hairstyles and generally amend county laws regarding discrimination. An HHS committee work session is scheduled for Monday, October 28th. Persons wishing to submit additional material for the council's consideration should do so before the close of business, October 23rd, so that your views can be included in the material which staff will prepare for the committee's consideration. So we have two groups. Let's start with Group A, James Stowe, Nicole Drew, Susan Betterkin Bishop, Sophie Sese, and Yamundo Sar. If you can please join us here at the hearing table. Any chair. Great, so we'll begin with Mr. Stowe.
Madam President, members of council, I want to take just a quick point of personal privilege and just share that my colleague from Fairfax County is here, Kenneth Saunders with the Fairfax County Human Rights Commission, and was recognize him in the audience this afternoon.
Welcome.
President Navarro, Vice President Katz, Councilmember Jawando, and distinguished members of council, we thank you for this opportunity to speak on this timely and important issue. My name is Jim Stowe, and as you know, I serve as Director of the Montgomery County Office of Human Rights. I come today to speak on behalf of the administration in support of Council Bill 3819, Human Rights and Civil Liberties, Race Discrimination, Protective Hairstyles. As you all are aware, County Executive Marc Eldridge has fought against all forms of discrimination throughout his political career and believes it is a core value of Montgomery County that all residents should have equal and fair access to a workplace and a community free of discrimination. If approved, the Office of Human Rights would address complaints as directed by the provisions of the law. The Office of Human Rights would also provide support for technical questions that might arise from employers, employees, housing seekers and housing providers, and patrons and providers of public accommodations. Based on information gathered from the state of California and New York City human and civil rights agencies who have passed similar laws, there has not been a major impact on the number of new complaints due to the passage of their laws. We would expect a similar experience here in Montgomery County. The county executive is in full support of the passage of this law, as is the Office of Human Rights. Thank you for this opportunity to share these brief comments.
Thank you so much. Ms. Drew. Oh, Nicole, can you please press there?
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Nicole Drew, and I'm the president of the Montgomery County Commission for Women. I am here today in support of Bill 30-19, Human Rights and Civil Liberties, Race Discrimination, Protective Hairstyles. I am pleased to be here in two capacities: as president, representing the entire commission, and also as a woman of color with intimate knowledge of this issue. I have also had to make choices of my own of how to wear my hair based on the audience. The commission represents the women in the county who constitute more than half of Montgomery County residents, and we unanimously support this bill because we are wholeheartedly against discrimination and encourage the celebration of Montgomery County's diversity. While this issue is not exclusive to women, it does impact a large group of women. The commission promotes the advancement and empowerment of women, and this bill eliminates another hindrance to a woman's advancement, economic empowerment, and overall well-being in society when there's no fear of this type of discrimination. I also want to emphasize the collateral effects of this issue. From a very young age, I was conditioned to accept a certain standard for what looks are acceptable as professional and well-groomed, especially in the workplace. For many years, I used chemical relaxers on my hair on a regular basis to achieve a certain look before I realized, like many other women, the dangers of the chemicals that we put into our hair that could eventually affect our bodies and ultimately destroy the natural state of our hair. Although I have not used these chemicals for almost 30 years, the conditioning of standards of beauty, grooming, and professionalism remain. My daughter recently experienced this discrimination on one of her jobs when a manager created an environment whereby African Americans were made to feel like it was taboo to wear their hair in natural hairstyles and its texture. While I was shocked that we still have this issue today, I was not entirely surprised. After all, I subscribed to this same belief system for many years myself as to what is considered as an acceptable and professional hairstyle, even to the point of making judgments about a friend who did not want to cut his dreadlocks to conform to that accepted standard. Eventually and thankfully, I altered my thinking, and I ask all of you to do the same and subscribe to a paradigm shift that allows individuals who are affected by this type of discrimination to feel comfortable, confident, and proud of the hair they were born with, to wear it in the natural state and texture, and to be free from this type of discrimination. And finally, I want to applaud Council President Navarro and Councilman Duando for tackling this issue and not seeing this as an issue to be marginalized or trivial as we help Montgomery County take steps towards equity and inclusion. Thank you.
Thank you. Susan Betterkin Bishop.
Thank you, everyone, for allowing me here today. It is an honor and a privilege to be able to speak on this issue on behalf of several different aspects of the community. I'm a mom, a salon owner, certified hair loss specialist, educator, community organizer, and a co-founder of the Natural Hair Industry Convention. As a mom, my 3-year-old son told me that, his teacher, preschool teacher, told him that his hair was dirty, because he hadn't had a haircut since he was born. He wore his hair natural. It was an afro. And I took it as a teachable moment because his sister was a year behind him and was going to the same school. So I went to the school and I had to educate the teachers and the staff about children of African descent and their hair texture. Because this is my life, this is my passion after 35 years in the industry and a 23 years salon owner. It didn't make sense for me to get angry, but to educate. As a salon owner, a 14-year-old female, after she grew her hair out, her locks out for 7 years, was told that she couldn't be accepted into a prominent ballet program because her hair was not the right way. She would have to cut it and then wear her hair straight up in a bun. This situation has gotten where it's an epidemic in our community because we are now experiencing hair loss because of our hair choices. We have something called traction alopecia because we wear so much extensions or weaves, or even though it's a choice, if you want to wear your hair like that, nothing against it, but it has to be done so often to conform that now it's causing health issues. And this natural hair bill, to me, would just hold people accountable who are deliberately mean and malicious and discriminate against a certain race because of their hair. It would create an atmosphere of respect and appreciation for the difference in culture, because it is culture. And this is not even just racial discrimination, it's a human right. This is who we are as human beings. It's our hair. So why shouldn't we wear our hair the way we would want to? It also started a conversation and possibly created education opportunities to allow those, to do better, who want to do better, and hold those accountable. Thank you, and I hope you pass this bill.
Thank you so much. Sophie Sese. Can you please press the button on the base?
Thank you.
There you go.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so very much. I wish to thank everyone for holding this hearing on a very consequential issue. The sponsors are courageous, and this hearing to me demonstrates a commitment to erasing discriminatory practices embedded in policy, which I hope will also dismantle the not so explicit but felt discrimination that I and some of my peers have experienced in the workplace. My name is Sophie Sese. I have had my hair in braids for as long as I can remember. It was, in retrospect, I consider it a rite of passage, because every Sunday before school starts, we would all take our hair out in the morning, wash, dry, put pomade in it, and then gather in the compound where the older sisters and cousins would do the hair of the younger ones. But in the process, we were learning how to interact, what behavior was considered acceptable, and how to communicate with our peers. And by some chance, we decided to talk about boyfriends, provided our parents weren't there. These were opportunities for us to kind of bond. So having braids was part of my aesthetic and my identity. So having it never caused me to think about whether I was prepared, whether I was intelligent, whether I had the skill set, whether I had the knowledge to be anything and to be anywhere I wanted to be. In fact, when I got my visa and bought my ticket to the United States, the last act I did before I boarded my plane was to have my hair braided. My worth or my intellect was never wrapped up in my hairstyle. However, all of this changed in 1993. I was hired at a company that does work for the defense industry. At first, it started out with them wanting to feel my hair, meaning some of my coworkers. When I didn't have braids but a short afro, I was asked what happened to my hair. When I changed to braids again, I was asked whether I used Miracle Grow. I was finally told by a coworker that Mr. Y, that our boss, Mr. B, had told him to tell me that I couldn't have my hair in braids in the office. I told him that until I hear it from Mr. B, I will pretend to not have heard him. My confidence, of course, was shaken, and I felt my job might be jeopardized. In 1995, it became clear to me that I needed to move on. The intervening period saw my work product being delivered to the customer by someone else, and many other actions, subliminal yet very clear to me, that they have other means of keeping me in check. tamed, if not fired outright. This is just a small example of some of the things that we encounter in the workplace, not to mention some of the things some other colleagues have encountered in the workplace. I support this bill. I hope that what is envisioned with this bill comes to pass. And again, I thank you all for bringing it to the conversation.
Thank you. Yamundo Sar.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having us. My name is Yaman Dowsar. I was born and raised in Montgomery County. I went to Forest Mills Elementary School, Silver Spring International Middle School, Northwood High School, and I'm a graduate of Towson University with a degree in business administration and a concentration in finance. Upon graduation, I worked at Morgan Stanley, and I currently work as a marketing program coordinator in DC. Most of the people I've worked with in the past and currently work with have the luxury of walking into work with a new hairstyle to be greeted with oohs and ahs and compliments. Unfortunately for me and many others like me, walking into work with a new hairstyle, whether it's new braids, freshly twisted locks, untwisted locks, or even rocking our natural afro, feel a feeling of dread and anxiety that loom over. Oftentimes, the pride and joy we have in our hair is overshadowed by strange looks and offhand comments from our coworkers and management. Being asked to join your manager in their office to have a conversation about professionalism when they can't verbalize or communicate what exactly is unprofessional is beyond frustrating. It leads one to believe that if our hair isn't straight or doesn't fall into line with the European standards of beauty, we are unkempt and unprofessional, which is far from the truth. It is heartbreaking that our fight to essentially come as we are is something that is never even thought of for our counterparts. To me, this bill would mean that we are seen for our capabilities and knowledge. This bill would mean that we are more than just our hair. This bill would mean that we are able to walk into our room with our God-given hair and not worry about feeling ostracized or separated. I am in full support of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I don't have you on my list on Group A. On the next panel? Okay, go right ahead. Just introduce yourself. No, it's fine. Go right ahead.
Whoops. Well, thank you for having me. Good afternoon, Council President Navarro and council members. My name is Wendy Green. I'm a professor of law at Drexel University Klein School of Law and the Francis Lewis Scholar in Residence at Washington and Lee University School of Law. I am a leading anti-discrimination law scholar, teacher, and advocate. Over the past 12 years, I've published an authoritative body of legal scholarship which calls on lawmakers like yourselves to adopt definitions of race in concert with how race actually operates in our society. Historically and contemporarily, characteristics like skin color, hair texture, and hairstyles are used to define individuals on the basis of race and in turn engender racial discrimination. My scholarly and public advocacy are instrumental in creating civil rights protections on federal, state, and municipal levels, and in particular protections against racial discrimination in workplaces, public accommodations, and schools, like the landmark California Crown Act and the New York City Commission on Human Rights Enforcement Guidance, which actually clarify that natural hair discrimination is race discrimination. As one of the nation's leading scholars on grooming codes discrimination, I have devoted my career to increasing public awareness around the harms of unchecked discriminatory grooming policies, namely policies that denigrate natural hairstyles as distracting, extreme, excessive, unkempt, and unprofessional. Policies that require African descendants to cut off our hair simply because of the way it naturally grows. Or in the case of Black women and girls, grooming policies that require that we don straight hair, usually achieved through toxic chemicals, as been discussed before, extreme heat styling, wigs and weaves, which are expensive and time-consuming to maintain. They too often result in painful chemical burns, permanent hair and scalp damage, as well as hair loss. Research also indicates potential correlations between hair straightening products that Black women use and their increased chances of developing uterine fibroids, hormone-related infertility, and more aggressive forms of breast and uterine cancer. Similarly, studies indicate a possible linkage between chemical relaxants and increased hormonal activity amongst African descendant girls. Therefore, natural hair bans leave Black women and girls in a precarious catch-22. Either don your natural hair at the risk of lawfully being deprived employment or educational opportunities, or don straight hair at the risk of enduring consequential, monumental harms to our psychological, physical, and physiological well-being. Currently, federal law permits this catch-22 through a hair-splitting legal distinction. If an employer denies an African descendant a job because she adorns an afro, the employer engages in unlawful race discrimination. However, the moment she twists, locks, or braids her afro and suffers adverse treatment on those grounds, the employer's discrimination is magically deemed lawful. The Crown Act fills this unjustifiable gap in statutory protection for African descendants who suffer natural hair discrimination, a systematic form of racial discrimination that harkens back to eras of racial slavery and apartheid in this country. Today, I strongly urge you to be on the right side of history by joining your fellow lawmakers around the country to enact the Crown Act, the first law in U.S. history to protect African descendants from racial discrimination on the basis of natural hairstyles.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Really appreciate all of you being here. We're going to move on to the next group. Thank you. For the next group, we have Chris Benbow, Suni Harris, Orlina Woka Blanchard, and Pam Farrell. So we will begin with Chris Benbow. Okay. Chris Benbow, yeah, there's a button there at the base. There you go.
All right, so thank you for inviting me today. I want to thank Mr. Will Jador for inviting me too. I also am in support of this bill because, one, myself, I have natural hair. I started my hair probably 15 years ago. And I started my hair for the main reason because I was incarcerated at the age of 16. My hair was a sign of my strength because I didn't want to let prison break me down. And a lot of times, like in prison, they give you a certain standard or make you do certain things. So I said that I wouldn't allow that to take a hold of me. And I wanted to grow my hair to just show my strength and my wisdom and the experiences that I went through. So I've been growing my dreads for the past 15 years. When I came home, my aunt told me that it was going to be hard for me to find a job because of my appearance and how I came out, because I also have tattoos too. So this bill doesn't just cover hair, it covers your appearance, it covers how you walk, it covers how you talk, it covers how you dress, it covers just an overall body of a representation of a person's style. So, but my dreads don't hold me to my appearance or how I walk, because a week of me coming home, I got a job. I work every day. I've been working at the same job for the past 2 years. They accept me for my hair. They accept me for my tattoos. But I know there's people that come behind me that may not get that same acceptance that I did. So I stand for this bill and hope that another person may get a second chance or the opportunity as I have. But also my aunt tells me that this is not mainstream society for you to have dreads. So I may not get that corporate job that I want, or I may not be that extra politician or that extra individual that may help the next person because of my appearance. So I also want to thank Mr. Will Jador for inviting me and allowing me to speak.
Jawando, but you're close.
Jawando.
Thank you so much for coming over today. Suni Harris.
Good afternoon, Council. My name is Sunny Harris, and as an attorney, I performed legal research and analysis that helped facilitate California's decision to pass the Crown Act into law. I humbly stand before you asking that you do the same. Think back to when you were preparing for your first career-defining interview. You contemplated what you were going to wear, how you were going to present yourself, and answers to anticipated questions. In addition to these considerations, people of color also have to think about how they're going to wear their hair. During law school, I mostly wore my hair natural. However, when it came time to interview with law firms and later practice with a law firm, I made the conscious decision to straighten my hair. The calculus was unfortunate but simple. My husband was a minister, and his position didn't pay very much. Thus, it was obvious to us, even while I was in law school, that I would likely be the breadwinner in our marriage. In an effort to help provide a level of economic stability for our family, I chose to straighten my hair and, in turn, capitulated to what many deem a professional image. Research suggests that my dilemma was not an outlier. A Black woman is the breadwinner in 81.1% of Black households. It is an underappreciated fact that Black hair is more fragile than white hair. The consistent use of chemical relaxers and/or heat to achieve straighter hair, comporting with what society largely deems professional, often results in significant hair damage and hair loss for people of color. This is one of the reasons why the Crown Act is so important. It recognizes that purportedly race-neutral grooming policies disparately impact persons of color and affirms that a person should not have to sacrifice the health of their hair in pursuit of economic stability. Contrary to popular belief, the Crown Act is very narrow in scope and is less about personal expression. Rather, it simply codifies a person's ability to wear hairstyles such as braids, locks, and twists that are necessary for healthy hair maintenance. To date, the courts have refused to apply anti-discrimination protections to aggrieved plaintiffs because they have considered the aforementioned hairstyles to be mutable choices, but the courts are misinformed. Hairstyles that support healthy hair maintenance are not mutable choices, but rather serve to protect the uniquely fragile texture of Black hair, a direct result of its biological and immutable nature. I implore this council to seize the opportunity to become a frontrunner in the movement to protect its residents of color from discrimination. In the words of Dr. King, the time is always right to do the right thing. Please enact this law. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Orlina Nwoko Blanchard. There's the button there at the base. There you go.
I'm actually Kelly Richardson Lawson. I'm business partners with Orlina.
Okay.
And I'm here as a resident of Montgomery County and the CEO of Joy Collective, one of the fastest growing agencies in the country, but also most importantly, the agency behind the work that's been done thus far on the Crown Act and the Crown Coalition in this country. My children go to Walt Whitman High School here in Montgomery County, and as the mother of 2 Black boys, I worry about them every day and what they might face when they're in school. We've seen countless instances this past year of discrimination affecting us and our children. We can recall May of 2018 when the Supreme Court refused to consider a hair discrimination case, which essentially gave employers permission to ban natural hairstyles. In August of that year, a 6th grader named Faith Finity in Louisiana was forced to leave school when she was told her braids violated school rules. That same month, the little boy, C.J. Stanley, a 1st grader in Central Florida, was turned away from school because of his beautiful dreadlocks. And then in December of that same year, a predominantly white crowd in a Buena, New Jersey high school watched as a white referee demanded a Black 16-year-old varsity wrestler cut his dreadlocks or forfeit the match. Coerced by the referee and failed by the adult onlookers, Andrew Johnson's locks were violently cut. Despite winning that night, video footage viewed over 1 million times on social media demonstrates that Mr. Johnson lost something much more valuable than his win could replace. He was denied the freedom to compete while wearing one of several protective hairstyles essential to his hair's health and growth. And unfortunately, the assault that night on Mr. Johnson extends far beyond high school. I can personally attest to the damage to my hair that was done when my mom took me back in the 70s to get my first chemical relaxer in high school in Cleveland. She had grown up in the segregated South, and growing up in the South, she was taught that what was pretty and what was professional and what was proper and appropriate was sleek, straight, chemically relaxed hair. So I, too, was taught these same things. And such started my journey with chemical processing and relaxers. And for the next 30-plus years, throughout my career at Procter & Gamble and BET here in Washington, D.C., and several other companies, I constantly relaxed and straightened my hair in the spirit of looking professional and fitting in. Joy Collective recently conducted a survey of over 2,000 black women that showcases 80% of black women feel the need to straighten their hair to get a job and to look professional. So I am proud to say that we are standing with you today and with several other members of the Crown Coalition, including Dove, the National Urban League, Color of Change, the Western Law Center on Law and Poverty, and 52 other like-minded organizations, including organizations like Delta Sigma Theta, the Lynx, Alpha Kappa Alpha, Jack and Jill of America, the National Council of Negro Women, and many others that are proudly here today to thank you for introducing this legislation, and we stand with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for all your work. Pamela Farrell? There's a button there at the base of the microphone. If you could press that. There you go.
Good afternoon, council members and Council President Navarro and Councilman Giwando, for the opportunity to give my expert testimony concerning the Crown Act Bill 3019. My name is Pamela Farrell. I am the co-founder, along with my husband Taladin Okta, of Cornrows & Company, the first natural hair care braiding business in the United States. 1980, we pioneered the natural hair care movement so we could fight hair discrimination. We won more dress code discrimination cases than anyone else. Some we filed with EEOC, and other matters we filed lawsuits. We are experts at fighting hair discrimination. I am currently the only expert witness having testified in both hair discrimination and braiding licensure cases around the country. In 1996, we were instrumental in getting the state of Maryland to exempt hair braiders from the cosmetology regulation. In 2015, we organized braiders and killed House Bill 1124 that would have changed that exemption act. The state of Maryland got it right the first time. I've been fighting hair discrimination for 40 years, and here we are, 2019, exploring other legal remedies. It has taken us 30 years to get 26 states to change their laws to protect hair braiders' 14th Amendment constitutional right to earn an honest living. I don't want it to take 30 to 40 years for all 50 states to adopt a law protecting our hair from discrimination. Contrary to what others may think, this is not about race, this is about hair. In my expert testimony before the U.S. Army, I demonstrated the two shapes of hair, circle and line. Each one has particular characteristics that determine its appearance and what styles are naturally compatible with it. The afro, braids, twists, curls, and lock hairstyles are compatible with circle hair shape. Circle hair and hairstyles must be a protected class. When state bills, acts, and regulations are created for circle hair, it is important to have hair experts at the table. It is important for me that the Crown Act bill gets it right, that the regulations to the act are realistic. The Crown Act bill will move through states like wildfire because of the urgent need to address hair inequities. I have addressed enough bills that pass and then other states adopt it without thoroughly vetting the details. The strength of this bill is that it addresses a hair problem that is not new and is not going away. So let's get it right. I am in support of the Crown Act Bill 3019 with consideration to add the following amendments. One is to change 27-6 definition, the word protective hairstyle to protected. And then in race includes to add hair shape and, again, protected hairstyles.
Ms. Farrell, what we'll do, because the time is up,
Yes.
we will take into consideration your written testimony so that when the committee meets, it can address the amendments that you are seeking.
Yes,
Okay?
thank you.
Thank you. Sombo Roof, Jeff? Yes. There's a button there. There you go.
Yes. Hello. My name is Sambo Puje. Thank you so much for having me. The Natural Hair Bill is critical for the African diaspora community that often has to navigate the struggle of wearing our hair as it naturally grows out of our heads in corporate and professional environments. It has been an ongoing struggle for me to have to find hairstyles that I think will be acceptable and not take away from being viewed on my own merits. Last year, when I interviewed for my current position at the Health Resources and Services Administration, HRSA, right here in Rockville, As I typically do, I spent over 2 hours straightening my natural curls the night before because of fear that I will be judged beyond anything other than my 7 years of state government experience, doctoral degree in public health, or my various community public health advocacy activities over the past 15 years. In addition to practicing responses around typical "tell us about yourself" and "why do you want this job" interview questions, the process of making sure every single strand of my natural hair was gelled down and straight has become a routine in my job interview prep process. It is exhausting. Until this bill was introduced, I did not even pause to think of the toll this effort has taken on me. Instead of focusing on shining through with my expertise, I am instead focusing on whether I will be accepted for who I am. This bill is essential to myself and other Black women who have fear that our natural hair makes us come off as militant or unprofessional. It takes us a step closer to equity so that everyone will understand that our hair is fine just the way it grows out of our heads. There's nothing wrong with who we are. Thank you so much for introducing this bill so we know that we too matter.
Well, thank you. Everybody's with somebody else that I left off? I'm trying to follow this list, and it's not necessarily in order. Please proceed.
Okay, hi, thank you, President Navarro. My name is Jeanette Conrad Ellis, and thank you, Councilman Jawando. I'm a resident of Montgomery County, a new resident. I hail from Chicago. I've been here for 3 years. I'm an attorney, an author, an A-game lifestyle advisor, a wife, and a mother of 3. That's the most important hat that I wear. As a mother of 3 children, all of whom rock natural hair, our daughters either wear protective braids or sometimes weave. Although they have naturally long hair, they wear it as a protective style. They've each experienced different discrimination based on that. A couple of years ago, our son decided to grow dreads, and he grew dreads to about his chin. Wasn't our choice, that's what he wanted to do. About a year ago, he self-selected and decided to cut his dreads. So out of his presence, his dad and I, who is also an attorney, said we were grateful that he chose to cut his dreads because at 16, we were concerned that a style like that would make it more likely that he would get pulled over in Montgomery County for driving while black with a hairstyle that was non-traditional. So he chose to get a fade. So that's a concern that we really didn't think we would have to have, but it's a reality faced by many people with children of color. I myself have had to make decisions based on how I will wear my hair based on the environment. In the summer, sometimes I will rock braids as a protective style so I can swim and not have to worry about my hair. But I do think about where am I going? How will that be perceived? Is that conservative enough, etc. Many of the same concerns that my colleagues have also expressed. So this is very, very important legislation, and we're grateful that you are giving it consideration. And finally, as we've taught our children, and as we should all be taught, we should only be judged by the content of our character, as Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. stated many years ago, our qualifications, and our experience, not the crowns on our head. So thank you for your time.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming today. I think that it is so very important to hear your voices. One thing is for us to introduce legislation. Another thing is for you to come forward and share in such an authentic way how this truly affects everybody and what impact it has, especially when you're trying to make decisions and when you're trying to almost anticipate how it is that you're going to be perceived. And as I stated earlier in our press conference, that's what my daughters, go through on a daily basis. And it is interesting how you just sort of deal with it without really thinking through the notion that it's ridiculous that in this day and age, we're still dealing with this type of extreme barriers in a society such as ours. So I'm really inspired by you coming here because I'm thinking of those little girls who hopefully very soon will not have to even think about this as they go through and just shine and just explore their potential and whatever it is that they want to do. So really, thank you for taking the time to come this afternoon. Okay, well, now we have public hearing, item number 7. It's a public hearing for the council to receive testimony on the Marc Rail Community Sector Plan, Sectional Map Amendment, SMA H-133, which covers approximately 252 acres in the Boyd's Plan area and approximately 290 acres within the Germantown Plan area. In Boyd's, approximately 38 acres are proposed for rezoning, and in Germantown, approximately 134 acres are proposed for rezoning. The remaining 213 acres in Boyd's and 155 acres in Germantown are to be reconfirmed in the existing zoning classifications. A Fed committee work session is tentatively scheduled for Monday, October 28th. And for item 7, we have Mr. Casey Anderson, Susan Soderberg, and Hamid Hogue. See, you always confuse me. Hogue, please come forward. That would be great. All right. Not Mr. Casey Anderson, but please proceed.
Thank you.
They're trying to trick me today with this list, I'm telling you. I don't know what's going on. All right, please go
I
ahead.
am completely innocent. Good afternoon, Council President Navarro and members of the council. I am Fred Boyd. I am on the planning staff of the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, and I am here representing apparently the Montgomery County Planning Board in this public hearing. The Planning Board urges you to approve Sectional Map Amendment H133, excuse me. As you may recall, the Council approved this plan on April 30th. The Planning Board approved the submission and the substance of this SMA on July 18th, and it was filed on the 31st. This SMA comprehensively implements the recommendations of the Marc Rail Communities Sector Plan. It applies zoning that will achieve the land uses, heights, and densities that are recommended in the sector plan. In Boyd's, it recommends zoning that will support the historic and rural community character and is consistent with densities outside water and sewer envelopes. It will also provide zoning that will allow flexibility of uses in Boyd's historic commercial structures. In Germantown, the SMA will apply zoning that will support the historic and residential areas and existing non-residential uses in the vicinity of the railroad station, and it recommends zoning that will allow sensitive, compatible, and appropriately scaled redevelopment in that part of Germantown. The SMA also, where it requires, it replaces or revises zones that were part of the that were retained from the previous zoning ordinance with equivalent zones that are more in sync with the new ordinance, and it reconciles some anomalies from the 2014 zoning code conversion. With that, I will again urge you to approve Sectional Map Amendment H33, and I thank you for letting me speak this afternoon.
Thank you so much. Ms. Soderberg. There's a button there at the base there.
Good afternoon. My name is Susan Soderberg, and I am representing the Germantown Historical Society, which is in great support of this amendment and of the plan. The Germantown Historical Society is actually mentioned by name twice in this plan and is supported by the following statement in the plan on page 88. Under preserve vision. Preserve, celebrate, and interpret the shared history and unique historic resources of the Boyd's and Germantown rail communities to foster distinctive community identities and strong sense of place. Position both station area for the areas for the future by sensitively adapting and enhancing historic structures for continued use while ensuring that future development and transportation improvements are compatible with and maintain the integrity of the historic settings. Germantown is now almost 100,000 residents, 2 high schools, 6 villages, numerous places of worship. If it were incorporated, it would be the second largest city in the state. But the people who live here have no cohesiveness, nothing that they can identify that brings them together except the name. That's why it's so important to preserve the original town, the place where the people who used to have the farms, where modern houses exist today, went to school, to shop, to catch the train to the city, to deliver the milk, apples, and grains from their farms to the train, and to do their banking. This is something everyone in the city can identify with. Our vision is to create a museum of banking history and local history in the historic 1922 bank building, which is exactly the kind of, quote, adapting and enhancing of historic structures this plan is proposing. Being the only museum of banking history in the state, it will also bring in visitors from outside, enhancing Montgomery County's heritage tourism. We have the support of the Maryland Heritage Area Authority with a $50,000 grant for 2020. Unfortunately, the County Council was unable to match this grant, which has caused us to scramble in order to match the grant with our own fundraising efforts. But we hope the Council will support this effort next year. Let's work together to make this plan a reality. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Hof. There you go.
My name is Hammett Huff. I am a 45-year resident of Boyd's and president of the Boyd Civic Association. I'm going to refer to some page numbers, which I'm sure you will not want to deal with right now, but it will be a reference that's useful. I call your attention to page 82, number 5, titled The Boyd's Recommendation. The Boyd Civic Association and individual members have been involved in the development of the Marc Rail Community Sector Plan from its initial draft. This is important because I and many of my members have attended public meetings and given our input on each preliminary draft update, of which there have been a number of refinements. I believe these zoning reclassifications are consistent with supporting our historic and rural community character of Boyd's while maintaining densities and locations outside the water and sewer envelopes. Next, I refer to page 96, Roman numeral 5, called Implementation, under A, Zoning in Boyd's. There is more specific identification of the various reasons for each recommendation on each affected parcel, should you care to get into that level of detail. Since the date of this plan, which was late 2018, a variety of steps have occurred which demonstrate where we are in the implementation of the plan's concept of expanding the capacity of the Boyd's Mark Station to accommodate more commuters who will embark at Boyd's in the AM during the work week. We will accommodate more vehicles to park and a bus shuttle service which will emanate from the Cabot Branch area of Clarksburg. In order to view the subject of the draft at late 2018, please review pages 38 through 40 and 67 through 69. Since the date of the draft, the following actions have taken place. Montgomery County has purchased the Anderson property. I render my thanks to each and every one of you that voted to make that happen. Montgomery County has tasked Montgomery County Department of Transportation with developing the plan for usage of the Anderson property. Montgomery County Department of Transportation has placed information on its website about the Boyd's Transit Plan, which includes the 20% and 30% design phase diagrams. The Boyd Civic Association meets on Thursday, October 17th. The team leader from MCDOT, Rebecca Park, will make a presentation on their 30% design phase and encourage questions. The meeting is held at 7:30 p.m. in the Kerr Hall of the Vale Education Building of the Boyd's Presbyterian Church on White Ground Road. All visitors are welcome. For further information, you may wish to look at our website from time to time, www.boydsmaryland.org, and I list my name and if you care, my telephone number and my email address in case I have questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hof. All right, well, this public hearing is closed. Appreciate you being here. So we're now on to item number 8. Oh, I forgot to mention that for this particular item 7, there will be a Fed work session on October 28th. All right, so for item number 8, this is a public hearing on a supplemental appropriation to the county government's FY20 capital budget and amendment to the FY19 to 24 capital improvements program for the Department of Transportation in the amount of $3,050,000 for Snowfer School Road. Action is scheduled immediately following this hearing. All right, we don't have any speakers for this hearing, so this public hearing is closed, but I'll need a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Katz, second by Councilmember Reamer. All right, all those in favor, please raise your hand. And that is unanimous among those present. Okay, so that concludes our public hearings. So now we're going to move on to legislative session. This is day 24th, and we're on to item 9, call of bills for final reading. Bill 11-19, Administration, Internal Audit, Inspector General Amendments. The Government Operations Committee recommends enactment with amendments. Let me just say that, let me just find my notes. Here we go. So this bill was introduced on May 7th by lead sponsors Navarro, Katz, and Friedson. And then on June 11th, Internal Auditor Bill Brogley testified on behalf of the County Executive in support with amendments. Government Operations Committee reviewed the bill on September 26th. We approved the Executive's requested amendments to the role of the Internal Auditor. Also, the Inspector General, Ms. Lamarcy, requested amendments to the role of the Inspector General and added a new sentence requiring the Council to ensure adequate funding for the Inspector General. This is something that I actually proposed as an amendment and we adopted. Also, the Inspector General's office would require increased funding in order to carry out the new responsibilities outlined in the bill. And this is something that usually we don't include in the bills, but we felt it was important to recognize this because this is making quite a major difference in what the Inspector General's office is doing at this moment and what it will have to do. Basically, the bill as amended would require the Office of Internal Audit to periodically conduct a risk analysis to identify areas of risk and accountability systems, prepare an annual work plan for the approval of the Chief Administrative Officer, and submit the work plan to the Council for comment. The bill also requires the office to submit an annual report to the Inspector General. The bill as amended by the committee would expand the Inspector General's duties by requiring the Inspector General to conduct a systematic risk-based rotating group-by-group review of the internal accounting and contracting processes and controls used by each department and principal office in the executive branch. The bill also requires the Inspector General to audit high-risk county contracts and agreements. And finally, the bill would require the Council to ensure that the operating budget for the Inspector General is sufficient to provide the services required in law. You have the packet as well, which really goes through not just the background, but then some of the particular amendments that I think did strengthen the bill. And we also want to thank Ms. Lamarcy and Mr. Brogley for participating in this particular work session. I also would like my colleagues to pay close attention on page 3 of the packet to see how other jurisdictions are funding their Inspector General's offices. And I think that you can clearly see that in our county, we do need to pay close attention and provide our Inspector General office with the resources necessary, especially in light of these additional duties that we are recommending. I would also like to recognize and appreciate Councilmember Friedson leadership on this issue. He kind of came in here and hit the ground running and identifying some areas where we all agree we needed to work on and strengthen, and so for that I really appreciate that. And I'll turn it over to him.
Well, thank you so much, Council President, and thank you to the Council Vice President and jointly as the Audit Committee of being able to work on this. I'm extremely proud of this legislation. I think it reflects the core responsibility that we have and the expectation that residents have of us to take fiscal oversight seriously and to make sure that we are doing all that we can to ensure that every taxpayer dollar is invested efficiently, effectively, and responsibly. This has been a long and deliberative process, but I think a very intentional process and one in which I think we got to a really good place. And so I appreciate your deliberative approach on that. And I want to echo your comments about Ms. Lamarzi and having a new Inspector General that we're excited about, but having her participation in this deliberative process to make sure that we're not only having a bill that sets the expectations for what that office will do and what we expect it to do, but that we have a serious and honest conversation of what that will cost. And it will cost resources, and I think those resources are required. I'm glad that you recognized page 3, which reflects the fact, as we talked about significantly during the committee, that we don't and haven't invested as much money as our counterparts in other governments on this core function. And if we want to take it seriously, as we have committed to do, that is going to cost money, and it's going to require commitment and sacrifice of other areas that have priorities for other initiatives. And but what it costs in public dollars, I think it will more than make up for in the added public trust that we are doing what we ought to be doing, that we are doing what we are telling taxpayers that we're doing. And I think that this department by department review of county spending, the identification of high-risk contracts will allow taxpayers to realize that we are doing this work and we are taking it really seriously. And I think that doing it in the proactive way that we're talking about, really strengthening the Inspector General's ability to be more proactive and not focus as much on being predominantly reactive in terms of tips related to potential waste, fraud, and abuse, will really allow us to ensure that every dollar that we are investing in our public programs are being invested in a way that we would all be proud of, and that we have the funding that we need for all the other priorities that we share. So I'm just very proud to have been part of this process. I really appreciate your leadership and partnership, and I really think that this was an example of us working with the executive branch, with our new Inspector General, and actually the past Inspector General as well, who participated in this deliberative process, and council staff as well, who really have been helpful. So thank you to all involved, and look forward to final passage of this important piece of legislation.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Friedson. Councilmember Glass.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to applaud the Government Operations Committee for taking the time to get this right so that the residents of Montgomery County, the taxpayers of Montgomery County, can have more confidence that we are going to be looking at our systems to make sure that taxpayer dollars are being used most efficiently. And this will provide the Inspector General with the kibble that our watchdog needs so that she can continue sniffing out fraud, waste, and abuse. Thank you.
Wow, it's 2:42 p.m.
Amend this bill to make sure that we never hear that one again.
All right, we could. Mr. Drummer. No. Councilmember Jawando.
Second, Councilmember Reamer. No, thank you. I just wanted to say this is so important. I know when I ran for office, many of my colleagues as well, we need to professionalize and upgrade and update and give our government the tools it needs and the resources it needs to do its job. And I think in no area is this more true than in the stewardship and the protection of taxpayer dollars. And I think we made a great move by putting Ms. Lamarzi into the spot as Inspector General. Now we have to give her the right amount of money so she can do the job that we all expect of her and do it well. So I just want to commend the GO committee and my colleagues, and look forward to passing it, and also just wanted to be recorded as affirmative for the previous vote.
Great, thank you. All right, this is a roll call vote.
Mr. Glass?
Yes.
Mr. Glass votes yes. Mr. Jawando?
Yes.
Mr. Jawando votes yes. Mr. Hucker?
Yes.
Mr. Hucker votes yes. Mr. Reamer?
Yes.
Mr. Reamer votes yes. Mr. Albornoz? Yes. Mr. Albornoz votes yes. Mr. Friedson?
Yes.
Mr. Friesen votes yes. Mr. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Katz votes yes. Ms. Navarro?
Yes.
Ms. Navarro votes yes.
All right, that's unanimous among those present. So now on to item 10, announcement, the public hearing on ZTA 19-07, telecommunications towers, limited use is scheduled for November 19th, 2019 at 7:30 p.m. And now I am going to propose a closed session to discuss appointment, employment assignment, promotion, discipline, demotion, compensation, removal, resignation, or performance evaluation of appointees, employees, or officials over whom it has jurisdiction pursuant to the Maryland Code, State Government Article 3-305B, 1I. Topic is legislative branch staffing, and so this is to go into closed session at the third floor council conference room. I need a motion.
So moved.
Councilmember Katz moved in, Councilmember Reamer seconded. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And that is unanimous among those present, so we will now adjourn and go to the conference room next door.